Got our own blooming cherry tree with us now. Brian Quinn is with us from the business desk. He's starting in the US. Theo, he's happy about that. He's happy about that. The effect of Donald Trump's trade wars, rattling markets and economic policymakers alike.
And American business leaders, it must be said, Stuart. Trump's seesawing policies on tariffs for Mexican and Canadian goods in particular have thoroughly disoriented the U.S. automobile industry especially. Ford CEO says the president's trade policies will bring, quote, only costs and chaos to the highly interconnected manufacturing supply chain in North America. Trump has exempted car makers from the 25% tariffs he imposed on the U.S.'s neighbors, at least until April 2nd, that after heavy lobbying from the industry. His 20% blanket tariffs on all Chinese goods, though, remain in effect, and he's threatening to hit the EU with significant import duties soon as well. Trade disruption and uncertainty have sent U.S. stock indexes into a sell-off. Last week was the S&P 500's worst week since September. The NASDAQ officially in correction territory. It's down more than 10% since its most recent high. The Atlanta Fed now warning that the U.S. economy is likely to contract by 2.4% in the first quarter of 2025, leading to fears that Trump's mercurial trade policies could spark a full-blown recession. The president downplaying those concerns, though, in an interview with Fox News broadcast on Sunday. Take a listen here.
There is a period of transition because what we're doing is very big. We're bringing wealth back to America. That's a big thing. And there are always periods of, it takes a little time. It takes a little time. Look, what I have to do is build a strong country. You can't really watch the stock market.
Now, meanwhile, US tariffs, they're not the only trade conflict being faced by Canada.
So incoming Prime Minister Mark Carney has vowed to win the trade war with the U.S. He'll have to do it while fighting another at the same time, this one with China. Over the weekend, Beijing announced new tariffs on some $2.6 billion worth of Canadian goods. That includes a 100% levy on farm products, including canola oil, cakes, and peas, with a 25% duty on pork products. That is in retaliation for Canadian tariffs of 100% for Chinese electric vehicles and 25% for steel and aluminum that were imposed last October. This trade conflict could actually be seen as part of the larger U.S.-China trade war. The Trump administration has signaled to Canada and Mexico that U.S. tariffs on their countries could be reduced or even avoided entirely if they follow Washington's lead in putting 20% tariffs on Chinese goods. Chinese state media is warning Ottawa not to align itself too closely with U.S. trade policy.
China urges the Canadian side to view bilateral economic and trade cooperation rationally, respect the objective facts, comply with World Trade Organization rules, and immediately correct its wrong actions.
What about the markets then, Brian? How are they shaping up today?
So Asian indexes mixed on Monday as investors digest the latest moves in those ongoing global trade conflicts. Chinese indexes in the red as deflationary pressure mounts there. New data showing China's consumer price index fell in February by its fastest rate in more than a year. Producer prices falling for the 30th straight month. Hong Kong down around 1.7%. Shanghai faring somewhat better amid hopes that new stimulus measures being rolled out by Beijing may finally kickstart domestic demand there. Here in Europe, meanwhile, a positive start to Monday trade as the markets start to bounce back after that severe trade-related turbulence last week. European defense shares like Germany's Rheinmetall and France's Thales climbing as investors look ahead to much bigger defense outlays on the continent. The CAC 40 here in Paris and the DAX in Frankfurt both up around 0.2% at the open.
Finally, for business from Brian, voters in Greenland are set to head to the polls. Tomorrow it is, in fact. The territory's wealth of natural resources looming large in geopolitical considerations.
The self-governing Danish territory is at a crossroads, Stuart, of course, struggling to decide whether or not to declare independence from its former colonial ruler. The vote, though, comes as Greenland is rapidly gaining in strategic importance. Climate change making the Arctic more navigable. Meanwhile, melting ice is increasingly exposing the island's significant wealth in both fossil fuels and rare earth minerals. Nick Rushworth takes a closer look.
The Danish territory of Greenland is believed to hold untapped mineral and fossil fuel reserves. However, on a global scale, the amounts are modest and only offer minor potential for exploitation. Greenland's Minister for Business and Mineral Resources says it is early days.
I think before we have 2 to 5 active mines, you cannot call yourself a mineral exporting country, really. So we're still in a very much greenfield pioneer country when it comes to mining.
It's estimated Greenland has around 36 billion tons of rare earth minerals vital for the tech industry and energy transition. However, it's also estimated only 1.5 million tons are technically recoverable. Greenland has graphite, lithium, copper and other resources. This geophysicist says it could become a key player, but not anytime soon.
Doing mining in Greenland is expensive because you don't have the infrastructure. You have to come, depending on where your deposit is, you'll have to build a harbor. You also have to build a road from the harbor up to your mine before you can start mining. It's a very energy consuming, it's very nasty polluting and very complex processing mechanism. And it is basically done in China. 90% of these rare earth element processing is actually done in China.
Greenland's uranium could be of strategic interest, however, there is a ban on mining it. And Greenland's national oil company says the island has roughly the equivalent of 28.43 billion barrels of oil. However, there has been no drilling as yet for oil or gas.
So a lot of mineral wealth there in Greenland, but some significant challenges to actually extract and make use of it, Stuart.
Brian, thank you very much. Brian with Business on